There's two major conflicts to look at in ancient Greece, and those are the Persian Wars and the Peloponnesian War. First, a note on warfare in ancient Greece. Most Greeks fought the same way. This is a standard Greek soldier called a hoplite, so called because his large shield, or hoplon in Greek. He's also got this long spear and heavy armor. And most people in the Mediterranean, and especially Greece, fought in this way. And hoplites would stand in a formation called a phalanx. The soldiers would stand shoulder to shoulder with a wall of spears and shields, and they basically just march at each other and press each other until one retreats. So the phalanx is very strong from the front, even if it's slow formation. Greeks also fought at sea, and this is a Greek ship called a trireme. Triremes were rowed ships, although they also had sails, and they had a large ram in the front that they could use to try and sink enemy ships. The first conflict to look at is the Persian War. When Athens had gotten to be one of the wealthiest states in Greece in the 6th century, it started to build a lot of colonies on the Ionian coast over here. And this was technically territory of the Persian Empire under Darius. So when Darius came in, he tried to tax these cities, these colonies. And Athens funded a revolt among these colonists, and Darius decided to invade Greece as revenge for this revolt. The most important battle in the early Persian War was the Battle of Marathon, where Persian generals brought ships to this site of Marathon close to Athens. And it was a famous battle because the Persians were essentially the Athenians were essentially on their own. They didn't have any allies at the time. But they drove off the Persians, and Darius didn't again try to invade Persia. But his son Xerxes decided that he would in revenge for the loss at Marathon. So he brought a huge force northward and marched into Greece over the rough terrain. At this phase in the Persian Wars, the Greeks, who remember were divided into city-states, were forced to join together. And so the Greeks made an alliance. One of the more famous battles in this other part of the Persian Wars was the Battle of Thermopylae, where a handful of Spartan soldiers and their allies managed to hold off the huge Persian force, which gave Athens enough time to evacuate. Ultimately, the Greeks won the Persian War, and as a result, Persia will stop expanding. Greece was briefly unified, and it comes into its golden age, especially in Athens, under Pericles. But also at the same time, you have Greek power really divided between those two powerful city-states, Athens and Sparta. Athens afterwards will create an alliance called the Delian League. All the cities and territories in yellow you see here were part of the Delian League. And essentially it formed an empire for Athens. The states had to pay Athens to be members of the league, and Athens became hugely wealthy under this. This is when they started to build the Parthenon and the other important structures in the Athenian Golden Age. Sparta, down here in the Peloponnesus Peninsula, saw this really as a threat, and so they made their own league, the Peloponnesian League. And soon, almost every city-state in Greece was divided between one or two of those leagues. And that led to a conflict called the Peloponnesian War, where Athens and their allies fought Sparta and their allies. And this war was long. It dragged out over a decade. During this war, Athens fell into a plague. Pericles was killed. The Spartans were forced to rely on allies from Macedonia and from mercenaries from Persia. Ultimately, the Spartans won the Peloponnesian War, but really as a result, all of Greece was brought down. The Spartans had to rely on foreign mercenaries. Athens lost its democracy, and really all of Greece suffered under the costs of the war, both human and monetary. And this really kind of brings an end to the golden age of Greece. And it won't be long after this until Greece's rivals in Macedonia take an opportunity to invade.